The following is a live presentation of CBC Sports.
If these walls could talk, what a story they'd tell of the legends in time who played this game well. Now the cheers of the many have all died away, but the memory lives on in our hearts to this day. If these walls could talk, if these walls could talk, they speak of the pride, the honor and glory that once lived inside the greats who have gone down in history. Proud to be part of a legacy. We once were the best, long did we reign. The standard was set, we passed on the flame. But in time every era must come to an end. We once were the best, and we will be again. These walls could talk, these walls could talk, they speak of the price, the toil and the tears and the sacrifice of the men who would willingly enter the fight for the honor of wearing the red, blue, and white. Once were the best, long did we reign. The standard was set, we passed on the flame. But in time every era must come to an end. We once were the best, we will be again. These walls could talk.
Regardless of how old you are, there's 72 years of your life. If the walls could whisper, they might tell everybody how to be a winner. But they haven't. This is the only place I know in the world where the ghosts have been kind to the homeowners. And if they had a name for these folks here, if it wasn't already taken, it would be Shriners. It's a pilgrimage, to be sure. And a real pleasure for those who are jamming the Forum for game number 3,228. One to go. Tonight it's the Ottawa Senators of the Montreal Canadiens, but obviously that's a backdrop to a lovely story. The final telecast for us after 5 decades on Molson Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. Good evening, I'm Ron McLean. We're going to spend the next 30 minutes or so traveling down memory lane to discover the myth, to discover why it is there's 24 Stanley Cups in the first perfect 10 in Olympic history, and do a little reminiscing with Dick Irvin Jr. and Donald S. Cherry, who I'm sure is the only man ever to have his nightmare lived out on national television. You want to stand on this side with your brand new red tie?
Yes, my tie, yeah. My wife paid so much for this, I'm going to be buried in it. I'm taking it with me.
Well, I hope it's still in style when you go. Listen, Don, you've got a solo effort on Coach's Corner about 1979, so I won't ask you about that. But when you think of this grand old lady, the Montreal Forum, what comes to mind?
You know, I should think I played here a couple of times, and I coached here, but I remember Hockey Night in Canada. I remember Danny Galvin. I'll tell you what happened. I was in Springfield, and I got in trouble in Springfield, and they sent me to Three Rivers. There's thanks for the memories there. Yeah, the memories for sure. And what happened was I got trouble. I threw the baby in the back. Cindy, wife and I took off. We got in the middle. I got lost, and I was in the middle of St. Lawrence. And I could hear Danny Galvin on the captain. His cabin was right there. What the hell did I do wrong? Here I am lost in the middle of a river. And I said, nobody gets any lower than this. 20 years later, I was with Hockey Night in Canada, and I used to do it all in Toronto. They sent me down here. I went up to do color. I sat down, and who did I sit beside? Danny Galvin. Here I am in the shrine, and I'm with the God of broadcasting, Danny Galvin. The Lord works in mysterious ways. There's wonders to behold. That's what I remember about the Forum.
God love you, Danny. More on you as the night goes on. Long before the Forum heard of revenue streams, Trois-Rivières heard of the Montreal Forum. When we come back, a little video clip going to break, but then some of the many great broadcasters who've had the privilege of saying bienvenue and welcome to hockey at the best place of all.
Years of the many have all died away, but The memory lives on in our hearts to this day. These walls could talk.
Tonight's special presentation, a salute to the Montreal Forum. Brought to you by Chrysler Canada. Chrysler, proud to be an official sponsor of the Canadian Olympic team.
Again from coast to coast, it's Hockey Night in Canada.
There was a certain personality and character about the Montreal Forum that didn't exist in any other building. It was very easy to be enthused and energized and excited about working there. We tried to convey that to the audience across the country. It wasn't too difficult because the players on the ice, the Canadians and the visitors, always put on a great show. So when they came to us between periods, we carried on, hopefully, with some of the excitement and the enthusiasm that people had just seen on the ice.
There is something totally unique to the atmosphere and the environment of the Montreal Canadiens and the Montreal Forum. I don't know what it is. For lack of a better phrase, it's kind of this elegant electricity, if you will. There's a sophistication, but at the same time, an excitement. And nowhere have I ever been has that atmosphere ever been duplicated.
It didn't matter what job you did on a game night. If you were an usher, you came in and you put on your blue uniform, or the men wore red jackets, whether you drove the Zamboni, whether you did a broadcast, whether you played. You were expected to do a very good job, and it seemed to elevate everybody to another plane somehow. It didn't matter what you did outside the Forum, but when you walked through the door on a game night, this was very serious. I mean, this was where the Canadians played. This was not just some rink somewhere. This was the Forum. There was a tremendous amount of history and a lot of legends, the stuff of legends here.
When you hear a great voice like Roger Doucette sing the national anthem prior to the game, you get all tingly inside and outside, and you're ready for that opening face-off. And it may have been my imagination, but I always felt the tempo of an NHL game at the Forum was a little higher than in other arenas. Maybe it's because the Canadians felt compelled to skate a little faster in front of the hometown crowd, and the other guys were frantically trying to catch up with them. When you saw Henri Richard or Steve Shutt or Guy Lafleur take that puck and race down the ice, it was something to see at the Forum.
Live on CBC, Hockey Night in Canada.
And I think I'll always remember it for the way the seats used to glisten with that deep red, as if they'd just been painted for every game. Other seats in other buildings have paint too, but those seem to always welcome you as if they were brand new. And the ice seemed to glisten more at the Forum than any other place. And in fact, a lot of players would tell you they'd want to skate on Montreal Forum ice before the ice in any other building. Certainly some of the new buildings that have had trouble matching those standards. But it was always a feast for the eyes, even at 10 o'clock in the morning when you went for the morning skate, because the place looked ready then for a game that would start at 7:30 or 8. And those visual reminders that you were in a place that regarded hockey the way it did stay with you when you leave.
Way to go, David. I'm standing here at the Montreal Canadiens bench, their locker room just in behind me, where Dick Irvin Sr. put the quote, "From here, in failing hands, we pass the torch, be yours to hold it high." That was Dick Irvin Sr.'s idea in 1940, and ever since, we've had the great lines coming from the Irvins.
first time I came into the old Montreal Forum was just before Christmas, 1940. My father had just started coaching the Montreal Canadiens after 9 years in Toronto with the Maple Leafs. The family still lived in Regina, but we came down and visited him at Christmas time. We stayed at the old Mount Royal Hotel, and I came with him on the streetcar to come to a practice, and that was the first time I ever came into this building. This lobby was kind of reversed. The box office is on this side now, but it was on the other side, and his office and all of the offices were upstairs, and he used to have to come and walk through the box office and go upstairs to what they called his office, which was then a table and a chair and a hallway. That's all they had for the coach then. And I was tagging along, and then he'd come back downstairs, and there was a wicket right here where they would take the tickets, and the people had direct access into the building right here on this side. So I would follow him, and he would go through that, and then he'd take me to the dressing room. That was the first time I was in the dressing room, and I remember it was a practice, and that was the first morning that I ever walked in to the Montreal Forum. I guess you could say I've had access to the Canadiens dressing room for 55 years, first as the 8-year-old son of the coach and now as a member of the local Montreal media. So I recall this room when I first came in, it was a little bit narrower, not the pictures or the names of all the teams on the wall, anything like that, just a blackboard with some chalk. I remember my dad used to change his skates with the players at a little bench at the end of the room. When he first arrived here in 1940, the Canadiens had almost gone out of business. They had a terrible hockey team, but he got here. They had a great player in Toe Blake. He was the leader, and they had Murph Chamberlain and Ray Getliff, veterans on the team, and a couple of kids from Western Canada, Elmer Locke and Ken Reardon, joined the team that year, and of course they would have careers that would lead them to the Hockey Hall of Fame. The first time I walked down that little hallway and through this gate onto the ice, I had my picture taken. A newspaper called the Petit Journal took a picture of me and my father. I was the smallest guy on the ice, and Jack Portland, the Montreal defenseman, was the biggest player on the ice. In fact, he was the biggest player in the National Hockey League at the time. I played home games here at the Montreal Forum for the McGill Redmen in the early 1950s. We used to practice here every day at noontime and play our collegiate games here, home games at the Forum. I was a fourth-line center on a three-line team, if you know what I mean. But you know, if I look back and want to get nostalgic about things, I've got a lot of nostalgia in this passageway right here. This is where the Montreal home bench was until just a few seasons ago. My father walked up and down here for 15 years. He used to be able to lean on the bench. They had bars along at the back, and Toe Blake after him, and of course Scotty Bowman, who coached what I think is the best team to ever play this game. I always kid Scotty. I say, you're my second favorite all-time coach, and he understands. But I think maybe perhaps my most vivid memory of this area is from the night of December 28, 1944, when I sat on the bench. I was 12 years of age. Can you imagine that? Didn't have many players in those days, 13 or 14 because of wartime restrictions. We were down for one of our Christmas holidays here in Montreal, and my father let me sit on the end of the players' bench. And that was the night Maurice Richard scored 5 goals and 3 assists for 8 points, a record that stood until Darryl Sittler broke it, and it took him over 30 years to break that one. And I remember after one of the Rockets' goals, he came and he sat down in the place, which held about 9,500 people at the time, everybody going nuts, and the trainer threw a towel around his neck, and he sat down beside me, and I'm sitting right next to him, and I was just scared. I thought everybody in the rink is looking down at him and saying, who's that kid? What's he doing? What's that little guy from Regina doing down at the end of the Canadiens players' bench? But I'll tell you, that's a long time ago that happened, but that memory is still very vivid for me. Over all of these years, I've seen a lot of shows in here that weren't hockey games. Many of my musical heroes in concert, Duke Ellington, Nat King Cole, Benny Goodman, Stan Kenton, Frank Sinatra. Saw Martin and Lewis when they were at the height of their comedy success. The ice shows, the wrestling. Saw Gene Autry ride his famous horse Champion through the door, off St. Catherine Street, and all the way down and up onto the stage before a full house of 15,000 here. And of course, the 1976 Olympics, Nadia Comaneci and Sugar Ray Leonard, they were here performing and winning gold medals at the Montreal Forum. But this, of course, will always be remembered as a shrine of hockey, going right back to the day it opened its doors in 1924. As far as I'm concerned, well, People ask me about your greatest players, greatest moments, greatest games. I don't have any particular single ones. I always say Maurice Richard, the most exciting player I ever saw, and Guy Lafleur, the most exciting I ever broadcast. I was here the night that the Rockets scored what we call his most famous goal, 1952, Game 7, semifinals against Boston. Score tied. He'd been knocked out and missed most of the game. He went end-to-end late in the third period and scored the winning goal on Sugar Jim Henry. The next year, Sugar Jim Henry again in the nets as Elmer Locke scored the Stanley Cup winning goal for the Canadiens in overtime. The Rocket got so excited he jumped up and grabbed Elmer and broke his nose. I was here in 1957 when the Rocket scored his 500th career goal. As far as the Flower is concerned, well, so many goals. I guess the most replayed goal probably ever scored in this building. I was alongside Danny Gallivan in the booth when he got that famous goal late in the third period. 1979, again, a seventh game against the Boston Bruins in the Stanley Cup semifinal. Not only the Montreal Canadiens, though, I remember all of those great players who played here in this building, from Bobby Orr and Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita through until the current days of Gretzky and Lemieux and all the rest. Talk about memories. The Irvin family has had these seats up just in the row behind me here, seats 10 and 11. We've had the contract for the season seats for over 50 years. Well, I have purchased those seats. So now when I want to sit down and reminisce about the days in the old Forum, I'll do exactly that. I'll sit in one of those seats and I'll remember. The broadcast booth, where I have seen, 1,000 or so games, I guess, since I arrived here to start earning a living back in 1966. The tail end of Jean Beliveau's career. The great teams, the Scotty Bowman teams, as I call them. The best team I ever saw play the game. But my most vivid memory up here, well, 17 years with Danny Gallivan. It doesn't get any better than that. And all of the men I've worked with, the play-by-play men, the color commentators, the analysts, simply, there's no other words to describe them. The best. And it's been great for me to be part of it.
Now the tears of the many have all died away, but the memory lives on in our hearts to this day. These walls could talk.
Building the Cup's run is over. 24 Stanley Cup banners, 12 of those were clinched on home ice. Well, this place went up in 24, built in 159 days. They often say you don't go back to someone's house because you like the furniture. You go back because you love the people. And boy, do we love the people. Let's get a few of their reminiscences.
The noise that would begin as we would come onto the ice before the anthem, the noise that would rise during the anthem, and the noise that would essentially stay and rise and sometimes explode during the course of a game, and it would just kind of, it would fill you up. It would make you forget every other thing. It would make you leave behind every other feeling, and you would just kind of ride the crest of it through the whole night.
Coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into the near back to the foot.
The 79 series where we're getting beat by the Boston Bruins 3-2, minutes something to go in the game, and I was lucky enough to tie that game, and Yvon Lambert scored in the overtime, and we won the Cup against the New York Rangers.
Harlamov, a great hockey player, gets the easy doors. Harlamov let a bullet drive go, and it beat right to the top left-hand corner.
In 72, it was amazing to see the face of the people, so sad after we lost. It really hit me because everybody was down, and they were expecting us to win. I think in 72 that was not just a hockey game. It was like a regime against our country against Russian country. So it was quite amazing to see how sad was the people of the Montreal Forum. 1921 we won the Stanley Cup in the Forum. The last 3 minutes of the game where everybody would stand up and standing ovation to the team, so happy about winning the Stanley Cup. I think that's the moment that will probably stay in my mind for the rest of my life.
Now in the seat that belonged to NHL President Clarence Campbell. He had to run from this building. By now I'm sure you know the story. It was St. Patrick's Day, 1955. I could go on and on. Better we heard from the voice, Danny Gallivan.
We saw the smoke arise from behind the goal judge. The smoke bomb went off. And it ascended up to the broadcast area. And we became very choked up, not over the incident, but because of the smoke. And play ceased. The teams retired to the dressing room. And Jack Adams, Mr. Selke, Mr. Campbell met. And they felt, and I think wisely, at the time a lot of people didn't agree, but the wise decision was to call the game a forfeit, the game to Detroit. The Forum then emptied. And in those days, I used to drive Sam Pollock down to the games. He lived out in the same general area as I lived in NDG. And he was up in the catwalk. I left my broadcast spot, and I was going to drive Sam home. He said, we had better go out the back way, he said, because they're throwing stones, breaking windows. And we snuck out and got in our car on the back. And I invited him over to my place, so we might relax in the proper atmosphere. Turned on the radio, and lo and behold, we heard the news that they had gone from the Forum, smashing windows, breaking everything they could break, and it was a riot.
The one, the only, Danny Gallivan, and somewhere in the distance, I believe I heard the voice of Claude Mouton, the longtime public address announcer, and Roger Doucette, the famous singer of Oh Canada. The Forum in Montreal opened in 1924. That night, the Montreal Canadiens were invited to play. Actually, the first 2 years, the Maroons called this building their home, but the Canadiens got to play here first, beat the Toronto St. Pats by a score of 7-1. Monday night, they'll close her out with a performance against the Dallas Stars. If I think of special moments, I spoke of the ghosts off the top of the show. Can't help but think of poor Don Cherry with the too many men on the ice. Al McNeil's brilliant decision to go with the rookie Ken Dryden in goal. And how about sorry Marty, but Marty McSorley's stick measurement in 1993. In fact, I remember in the first round that year, Montreal had lost 2 in Quebec. They come home. Ron Hextall makes a sensational save at the one end. Play goes down the other. They beat Roy. It looks like he's going to be a sieve for the whole series. Suddenly, he gets a spine that's stiff. They go to overtime. The Canadiens win it and win, as you know, 10 in overtime. That's always been the magic of the most storied franchise in NHL history. As buildings go, Russia's the other great country. They've got HNIC, but nothing tops this building. Hockey, it put Canada on the map, but if you're looking for the mailing address, it will always be the corner of St. Catherine and Atwater, the Montreal Forum. What's the magic? It has to be what Dick Irvin Sr. described as the unseen hand. It's been passing the torch for 72 years. We've been pleased to be a part of it since 1931 on radio, since 1953 on television. Let's let you soak up a bit of the atmosphere and see if you can spot that magic hand.
Canada's deciding it wants to have a perception of me. I'm the daughter of Peter and Gail. They just live next door to everybody else, and I just go out and I do my thing. And I come home, and Peter and Gail are just proud of me. And I think I like the idea of the perceptions of me. I just want the way my friends see me. They know I work hard, and when they need to count on me, they can.
Mon cher, this is a very difficult letter for me to write, although it must be done so that I may free myself to move on and find another. There is, you see, so much between us, you and I. So very much. So many memories, so many feelings, so much emotion, so many years. And you have been there the whole time, for me and for us all. A bastion, a place of comfort and warmth, even when the coldest winds St. Catherine Street can muster howled down upon us, chilling us to the marrow. You were there, always there, lights beckoning radiant to take us in, to embrace us, to give us comfort. You gave us confidence, too, a sense of unity. You were a place where total strangers became lifelong friends, sharing passion for the team, for the game, and for you. And all the world over, they know your name, call you the temple, the center, the very heart of the game, because you've always been there. Let's stop tonight and remember. Remember how we danced in your shadows, how we basked in the light of glory and reveled in victory all those many springs, how we shook your firmaments in celebration. So much laughter, so much joy, and you were always there. You held us in the warmth and comfort of your bosom, and we were, all at once, together. Oh, I know it. Nothing lasts forever. But you will. You will always remain a shining beacon in my heart. And there you will stay. Au revoir, mon cher. Goodbye, my forum. You must know for certain that I will never forget you.